Roxas has one of the saddest stories amongst the characters of Kingdom Hearts, being brought into the world not knowing who he is or what purpose he serves, and ultimately confused as to whether he is his own person or not. Roxas is actually a big part as to why I love the story of Kingdom Hearts so much. While Sora's adventures are usually filled with quirky moments, joy, and reasonably happy attitudes, Roxas's adventure is rarely the complete opposite. Today, we'll be exploring Roxas's tragic story.
I'll have these moments memorized for a long time. Forever.
Me too. Forever.
Let's start at the very beginning, the birth of Roxas. Roxas is first and foremostly Sora's nobody and was brought into existence when Sora stabbed himself with the Keyblade of Heart during Kingdom Hearts 1. This led to the creation of Sora's Heartless and Nobody. However, Sora was only a Heartless for a very short amount of time before he returned to his original self from the light of Kairi. Because of this, both Sora and Roxas coexisted alongside of each other. Roxas found himself waking up in Twilight Town outside of the old mansion, to then quickly be confronted by a hooded figure, who is none other than Xemnas. Xemnas explained to Roxas that he could give him purpose, as well as also granting him with an actual name, which turns out to of course be Roxas, by rearranging the letters of Sora and adding an X. This is the very moment Xemnas recruits Roxas into the organization and becomes the 13th member. Shortly afterwards, Xemnas summons Roxas to the Dark Margin to ask if he remembers his true name and that quote-unquote he looks a lot like Roxas. Who could Xemnas be talking about? Sora, of course. The he is referring to Sora, as in Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, Xemnas is a secret boss fight. When Xemnas explains to Roxas that he has been to see him, he is referring to the boss fight in Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix where Sora encounters the hooded figure. Shortly afterwards, Roxas begins to serve the Organization 13 to start carrying out tasks and putting his skills to use. Because Roxas is oblivious to almost everything that is going on, Xemnas ordered Axel to watch over Roxas and to guide him. This was the very start of their friendship. During the first mission, Axel showed Roxas a special place that he likes to go to in Twilight Town. This was of course the top of the Twilight Town clock tower, that becomes a familiar place for Roxas throughout his time in the organization, and he ends up spending a lot of time there eating sea salt ice cream after his missions. Vexen, Xion, Larxene, Lexaeus, and Marluxia all spend time with Roxas teaching him how to use his abilities and to destroy the Heartless. They also explain why he is needed in the organization and what their true goal is. Roxas continues to carry out his missions mainly with Axel guiding him by his side. During a mission in Twilight Town, Axel asks if Roxas wants to get ice cream. Roxas in return asked why, and Axel explained, well, that's what friends do. We have to remember that Roxas was brought into existence with little to no memory or emotion, and typically he can be described as a zombie at first. Friendship was one of the first emotions Roxas learnt about, and is of course an important theme throughout Kingdom Hearts. A few days go by and Axel is assigned to a mission in Castle Oblivion. Saïx explained that there are traitors amongst the group that went, and that Axel must dispose of them. This meant that Roxas was without his typical guide, or more so friend, for a while. Roxas was then ordered to start carrying out missions with Xion, the latest addition to the organization. Xion at first was very distant and quiet during their missions together. On day 24, Xion spoke her first word, and that was Roxas. The day after that, Roxas and Xion's friendship started to bloom, with Xion being more social and taking her hood down. Towards the end of that day, they encountered a stronger opponent than usual, and this was a dark side Heartless. With Roxas being flung to the ground, it was up to Xion to take over the situation. Xion all of a sudden summoned a Keyblade and quickly disposed of the manifestation of darkness. Roxas was baffled that Xion could also summon a Keyblade, which of course brought these two closer, and it meant that they had something in common. Just like Axel, Roxas showed Xion the special spot on top of the clock tower, and also introduced her to sea salt ice cream. Roxas ends up explaining what friends are to Xion, and in response, Xion asks if she could be a friend. Similar to Roxas, Xion has no recollection of any sort of memories or emotions, and has to learn what exactly they are. Roxas is then ordered to take on a mission in Agrabah with Xigbar, and during the end of this mission, Roxas falls onto the ground and goes into a coma for several weeks. The cause of this is from Sora going into a sleeping pod so that Naminé can rewrite Sora's memories and ultimately chain his memories back together. Because Roxas is Sora's nobody, this also affected Roxas as well. During the time of Roxas being in a coma, Xion visited while he was asleep, placing shelves by his side and telling him stories about what worlds she had visited. This showed that Xion cared for Roxas, and was another emotion that Xion discovered even though she might not have known it. Roxas eventually wakes up from his sleep to then encounter Xion in Twilight Town. Xion gives him a shell which makes him remember a very faint memory of a boy and girl sitting by the ocean. This was once again a side effect happening to Roxas due to Sora's memory restoration going on in the background. Shortly afterwards, Roxas ends up encountering XIII and is very surprised to see him, as Cynical's explained the members who went to Castle Oblivion were destroyed. However, not XIII. Roxas mentioned how he was worried about XIII's disappearance, which is yet another sign of emotion and shows that Roxas is unique, as nobodies are not meant to have emotions or feelings. 10 days had gone by and Roxas hadn't seen Xion at all since XIII had returned. However, during a mission shortly afterwards, both Roxas and XIII encountered Xion outside of the mansion whilst trying to take down a Heartless. Xion ended up explaining to Roxas that she couldn't use the Keyblade anymore, and Roxas was desperate to figure out how he could help. It was clear that Roxas cared a lot about Xion and their friendship was continuing to grow. XIII offered the idea up of Roxas working double duty to collect the hearts for Xion until she could use the Keyblade again. Roxas, without hesitation, agreed. Many days later, Xion departs the organization to find answers she had been seeking for herself. Roxas was worried about Xion's disappearance once again and tried to search for her. During this time, Xion had found out why she existed and what her purpose exactly was. Roxas eventually found Xion in Twilight Town, however she was very distant from Roxas and tried to evade him. This was because of the answers she had found out. XIII eventually captures Xion after a fight, and he then returns her back to the castle, leaving Roxas wondering why. A short while after, Roxas asks Xemnas about what happened to Xion. In response, Xemnas explains that she needed rest, dodging the real answer. Because of this reply, it triggered Roxas to remember the name that Xemnas had mentioned in the Dark Margin during Roxas's first week with the organization. This name was of course Sora. Roxas questioned Xemnas, asking who Sora is, and in response said the connection. Xemnas explained that Sora is the one who makes both Roxas and Xion a part of their lives. Roxas had once again gone into a coma due to Sora's restoration. During this time, Roxas's mind had continued to be flooded by Sora's memories and adventures throughout Kingdom Hearts 1. There is also an interesting memory that displays Donald and Goofy leaving Sora's side, which is a flashback that Roxas was having during the time. This is probably a result of losing contact with both XIII and Xion. Eventually, Roxas wakes up with a tear running down his face. He questions the tear, wondering what it is. Of course, this was the first time that Roxas had experienced sadness, but there was soon more to come. Xion eventually returned and Roxas was growing weaker by the day, however not Xion. This was because Xion is an exact replica of Roxas, created from Sora's memory, who is meant to copy Roxas's power. It was apparent that while Xion was using these powers, it was weakening Roxas in the process. During a meeting between Xemnas, Xigbar, and Cynical's, Xemnas explains that there is no longer any purpose to have both Xion and Roxas within the organization, as one's power is being drained from another. He mentions that if either Roxas or Xion perishes, they will still maintain control over Sora's power, as long as they still have one alive. Xigbar, XIII, and Xion ended up departing on a mission. During this time, Xion attacks Xigbar and begs XIII to let her leave the organization in order to fulfill her destiny. XIII ended up allowing Xion to leave, and this put the organization on high alert. Xemnas ended up ordering XIII to find and capture Xion, as she was on XIII's guard. During this time, Roxas finds out from Xemnas that Xion is indeed a puppet, whose purpose was to serve the organization in order to use the Keyblade's power. Roxas ended up spending time alone questioning himself towards what purpose he serves, as he had only just found out the truth behind Xion. Believing that XIII had known the truth behind Xion for some time now, Roxas decided to confront XIII about some answers towards who he really is. Roxas ended up confronting XIII about who he really is, where he came from, and how he learned to use the Keyblade. XIII in response explained that he couldn't tell him, and that sometimes the truth isn't meant to be found out. Roxas was angered from the response and left XIII desperately searching for answers, ultimately abandoning the organization, knowing that they would come after him. Xion ends up meeting with Naminé and decides it's time for her to go back to Sora. In doing so, she'll disappear and any memories of her will end up vanishing. On day 357, Xion finds Roxas sitting on top of the clock tower. This is the last time they ever spend eating ice cream together. Xion tells Roxas that she's out of time and takes her hood off, which shows the face of Sora, meaning that she is ready to return. She explains that it is also time for Roxas to return as well, pressuring Roxas to fight Xion. However, Xion never intended to destroy Roxas, rather to convince him to fight so that he would destroy her body so that she would return to Sora. Roxas eventually defeats his beloved friend, with Xion knowing that Roxas will now be better off without her. During the time of Xion's fading, Xion explains to Roxas that he must not let Xemnas have his way with Kingdom Hearts, and that the captured hearts within Kingdom Hearts must be set free.
To go away now. Better that than to do nothing and let Xemnas have his way. I belong with Sora. And now I am going back to be with him. Roxas, I need you to do me a favor. All those hearts that I've captured, Kingdom Hearts, set them free.
Kingdom Hearts? Free them?
It's too late for me to undo my mistakes. But you can't let Xemnas have Kingdom Hearts. You can't. Goodbye, Roxas. See you again.
Shortly after this, Roxas makes his way back to the world that never was to put an end to Xemnas and to set free Kingdom Hearts. However, on his way there, he was confronted by a figure in a black coat with a bandana covering his eyes. This was, of course, Riku. Riku was there to stop Roxas so that he wouldn't make the crucial mistake of being destroyed by the organization, and to take Roxas for himself so that Sora's restoration can be complete. Roxas was the final piece towards Sora's reawakening. Roxas's main goal was to stop Xemnas and to free Kingdom Hearts, so that everything can go back to the way it was, and to also bring Xion back. However, Roxas wouldn't have been able to overrule the organization's power, and Riku knew this. After a long battle, Riku came out successful. However, because Roxas contained powerful strength, it meant that Riku had to unleash the darkness from within his heart in order to defeat Roxas. Roxas was then returned to Diz with his memories reconfigured so that he wouldn't have any recollection of his time in the organization. Roxas was then put into an alternate digital Twilight Town where he was best friends with Hana, Pence, and Olette, leading a normal life, a life that he had once dreamed of. This is of course where the start of Kingdom Hearts 2 begins. Roxas wakes up in a room with his memories reconfigured to think that he's starting a normal day. Over the next 7 days, parts of Roxas's original memories start to fall back together, although not entirely. Xion is a memory that Roxas never remembers after her death, as when she faded away, any recollection of her existence was wiped. However, deep within Sora's heart, the memories of Xion and Roxas still remain, but ever so slightly. At the end of Roxas's summer vacation, he finds himself in the basement of the Twilight Town mansion, in which he is confronted by Diz. Diz explains who Roxas is, as well as Sora, and what purpose he serves. Roxas, who is angered by this explanation, tries to argue that he is his own person, who has his own heart, but comes to his senses that he must reunite with Sora.
Sora. You're lucky. Looks like my summer vacation is over.
Throughout the events of Kingdom Hearts 2, Sora is constantly referred to as Roxas by a few of the different Organization 13 members. This is because Roxas is now dwelling inside of Sora's heart. By the time Sora reaches the world that never was, which was once Roxas's home, Sora fades into a mental struggle with Roxas, and the two fight it out at the Station of Serenity. Sora at first is confused who the hooded figure is, and believes it could be Riku. Roxas mentions that he once defeated a Riku, but of course that was not really true. Sora ends up defeating Roxas, and in response Roxas mentions that Sora makes a good other. After the fight, Sora then awakens back in the world that never was, completely confused, as both Donald and Goofy didn't see Sora disappear, or any black hooded figure. The fight was going on within inside of Sora's heart. As Sora progressed through the world that never was, the remaining organization members continued to refer to Sora as Roxas. At this point, Sora was determined to meet Roxas, and shortly after Sora reunited with Riku and Kairi, Riku went on to explain that Roxas wanted to meet Sora as well, and that he had captured Roxas in order to bring Sora back. Riku also mentioned that Roxas is Sora's nobody, and he now resides within Sora's heart. Towards the very end of Kingdom Hearts 2, after Naminé reunites with Kairi, both Roxas and Naminé project out of Sora and Kairi to finally become whole with their somebodies, and to properly meet. Roxas mentions to Sora that as long as Kairi and Sora are together, then so are Naminé and Roxas. This was a sign that Roxas was finally at peace of mind and accepted who he was. Roxas' story is a sad one. It's a tale about a boy who for the majority of his life had no clue who he was and what his existence meant. Throughout his time he experienced hurt, confusion, and being referred to as someone else. Roxas lost many friends along the way, but over time he realized that resting inside of Sora would one day mend this hurt. During Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, Sora believes that Roxas' memories are his own, and that he is his own person. The question now remains, will Roxas return in Kingdom Hearts 3, and will he finally get to sit down with his two best friends again? Only time will tell.
Take care. Okay?
Right back at you, buddy.